In this lecture, we're diving into the basics of functions. Functions are like the building blocks of any program. They allow us to organize code, make it reusable, and make it easier to understand. Think of them as little machines that do specific tasks for us whenever we call on them. We'll cover how to define and call functions, how functions return values, and the concept of variable scope. Let's start with the core idea of functions. Functions let us package up a piece of code to use it again without having to write it all out again. This is really helpful, especially when you have some repetitive task to handle. So instead of copying and pasting the same lines of code over and over, you can just define it once as a function and then call it whenever you need it. Now, let's practice together by creating a new folder within our PyProject directory called Functions. Inside this folder, create a new file and name it basicsoffunctions.py. In this file, we'll begin by defining a simple function that greets us. Remember, when defining a function in Python, the colon at the end of the function header and the indent for the code inside the function are crucial. Then we'll use it by calling the function. Once you've typed the code, save the file and run it in the terminal. You should see the message, "Hello, welcome to learning about functions," appear as output. This is our first function in action. It doesn't return anything right now, it just performs the task we asked it to, which is printing a message. Alright, so that's how we define and call a function. But functions can do more than just print things. They can take inputs, process them, and return outputs. Let's define a new function that adds two numbers together. Then, we call the function to add 5 and 3 and print the result. If you run the code, you should see the result is 8. Here, the function addNumbers takes two inputs, num1 and num2, and it returns their sum. We store this result in a variable and print it out. Notice how we use the return statement instead of printing directly inside the function? This allows the function to give us back a result that we can use in other parts of the program. Now let's talk about variable scope. Variables created inside a function are local to that function. This means they can't be accessed from outside the function. Let me show you an example of this. When you run the code, you'll get an error after the function runs. Why? Because the variable message only exists inside the showScope function. It's like its own little world, and once the function finishes executing, that world disappears. To recap, we've learned how to define and call functions, how to use the return statement to get a value back from a function, and we explored the concept of variable scope, where variables inside a function are local to that function and can't be accessed outside. That's it for the basics of functions. Functions allow us to structure our code, make it reusable, and control where our variables live. This is an essential skill in programming, so keep practicing.